If you've been paying attention, you would have noticed that nearly every big name in comics has a Substack now. A what stack now, you may be asking? I'll save you the trouble of Googling it. Substack is the name of a fairly new newsletter service, free or if you so desire, subscription-based, that has single-handedly swept comic book creators off their feet in the last couple years. Substack as a company has accomplished what must be one of the most successful user migrations ever in the name of comics. They did this by offering large sums of money to creators, allowing them, as well as strongly encouraging them, to utilize their newsletter, what would be their Substack now, to make brand new creator-owned comics for the platform. No strings attached. Imagine a wealthy stranger who recognizes your talent coming up to you and saying, "I'll pay for everything. Go be creative and tell your stories. Oh, and you can still own your stories too." It's a best case scenario for us creators who make comics because, as anyone would tell you, making them ain't cheap. One such big name creator who not only ran with this opportunity, but flew to the high heavens with it was Jonathan Hickman. You may have heard of him. Along with a team of other writers and artists, Hickman launched not just a new comic, but an entire universe with his Substack. It's called 3 Worlds, 3 Moons, a science fiction epic spanning thousands of years. Because, it's Hickman. Earlier this year, the 3 Worlds, 3 Moons crew had a talent search for writers to pitch stories for this universe. Encouraged by a writer friend within the indie comic scene, who was responsible for bringing this competition to my attention in the first place, I decided to enter it. I would come up with the best pitch I possibly could. More than anything, I wanted to collaborate and interact with my favorite comic book writer, Hickman, and I needed to prove to myself that I had what it takes. I needed this win, and I needed it bad. I just wouldn't know how bad until later. Before we get to the pitches, if you could please subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. And if you could also sign up to be notified when my new comic launches on Kickstarter this fall. We're launching on October 18th. The Fabled Offering is a sci-fi fantasy epic that will leave you speechless. The art itself is going to knock your socks off. So please sign up to be notified. I'm trying to hit 150 followers before launch day. And while we're talking about Substacks, please subscribe to my Substack if you haven't. I've been posting regularly and updating everyone. If you want to get to know me a little bit more, if you want some more information about my books, you can subscribe there and learn about that. I would love to chat with you. The competition was set up as a series of rounds. Round 1 consisted of pitching your idea for a full-length single-issue comic in one paragraph. If your pitch was one of the initial 10 selected, you would move on to round 2 where you would then outline your pitch. If your outline was one of the remaining few selected, then round 3 required you to write a scene from your story. The winner would be chosen after this round and would wind up producing the 3 Worlds, 3 Moons comic for the newsletter while getting paid a substantial page rate for it. This would be a dream come true for most writers, including myself. All in all, this was going to be a challenge. Even if my pitch made it through the first round, what about the following rounds? If I was going to enter this competition, I needed my pitch to be something I fully believed in. A story I was passionate about that would also lean into my strengths as a writer. I'd written over 300 pages of comics by this time, so I didn't doubt my ability to tell a story, but I wanted mine to stand out amongst the crowd, to be unique, a story I could only tell. But before I could find out what that story was, research was required. Lots and lots of research. Since I was an early subscriber to the 3 Worlds, 3 Moons Substack, I was acquainted with the universe that was being built. Yet I hadn't sat down to immerse myself in the stories being released and the ever-expanding lore being built. It was time to rectify this. For an entire week, I devoted any time I had on catching up on all that I had missed until I was absolutely sure I'd scoured every trace of the 3 Worlds, 3 Moons universe available to the public. During this process, I was taking notes and scribbling down possible pitch ideas. I absorbed all there was to know about each planet, each moon, their significance, their histories, their mythologies, their currencies, their cultures, and so forth. I did this because it was important to me that my pitch didn't step on the toes of any other story already being told or rehash ideas that were already established. My pitch needed to work within the continuity of the series. It needed to feel like it fit. If I'm going to develop a story within a property not my own, I must show the creators that I care enough to do my part and that my little story belongs in their big one. Otherwise, the work risks becoming a generic, bland exercise that anyone could have proposed. No, it had to be inseparable from the work already being done, and it had to make sense. That was my thought process anyways. Here's my 1-paragraph pitch I submitted. entitled Lost, Now Found. During the decline of a magic cycle in centuries past, June Duran is a worshiper of Voda and glory, and his thirst for truth turns his life upside down when he decides to challenge his religious superiors and their hypocrisy. His claim, the use of mercenaries as proxies to engage in war with the other church, is still in direct violation of the sacred texts. His fervor only grows after his parents are killed in the crossfire of one such violent conflict, but he is then excommunicated. Duran spends the next 2 decades of his life at the Institute with the vengeful desire to rid the worlds of religion/magic, only to eventually find love there and then lose it along with an incredible discovery to the bank, his own lover being the thief corrupted by greed. After endlessly scouring the halls of the great Bibliothekis, Doran, now filled with apathy yet restless for answers, sees the cracks and patterns in the universe, becoming one of the most vocal members, if not one of the founders, of the Sekvenchi belief system. Note, I'm assuming the third religious sect does not engage in any of the proxy wars. If that isn't the case, we could have our main character turn into the very thing he sought to undermine, essentially telling a tragedy of a cyclical nature. In either case, the point of the story is to show a character fluctuate between chaos and order, his life essentially being an analogy to the way the Three Worlds, Three Moons universe is set up. His arc ends by discovering a third path. Now, I'm sure a lot of this doesn't make sense if you're not familiar with the Three Worlds, Three Moons universe, but I hope it still sounds compelling enough. I really wanted to explore a character whose arc paralleled the cyclical nature of this universe, yet also transcended its binary structure. I was also personally fascinated with the Sekvenchi and their role in the larger story. I envisioned it as being a one-and-done snapshot of this new universe. After submitting this pitch, anxiety struck. What if this is too lore-heavy? What if it's too deep or complex for a one-shot? So, seeing as writers were allowed to submit more than just one pitch, I went the extra mile and concocted a second pitch totally unlike the first. I had all this information, I may as well use it, I thought. Being a numbers game, maybe this would raise my chances at being chosen. It couldn't hurt at least. Here's what I came up with. The fall of Akva begins with a dream. The dreamer's name is Leko, the crime lord of crime lords on Air, and he desires to take over the production and distribution of core on Akva by means of bribery, manipulation, and sheer force of will. Leko's primary puppet is Morrigan, who promises him all the funding and resources available to her once he helps her take the throne of Feyre, becoming queen. Together they will overthrow the religious gatekeepers, orchestrating a decade-spanning war of two worlds, the scale of which the universe has yet to witness, each side recruiting mercenaries, pirates, and magic users. This event onsets the corruption, perhaps even the initial fracturing, of the two religious sects on Akva and the ascension of one of the very first Order cycles. This one I wasn't as excited about, but there was still a story there I wanted to tell, which was good enough for me. I remember the moment I checked my email and saw the winners were announced. I had just parked my car outside my apartment complex, having come home from my day job, exhausted. I opened the email and scrolled very slowly from one name to the next on the list of winners, anticipating both the best and worst outcomes. My name was nowhere on this list. Adding insult to injury, they chose 11 winners instead of 10 because of the amount of submissions received. Mine just wasn't one of them. I got out of my car, walked into my apartment, and bathed in my defeat for the rest of the evening. I don't think I read one comic for weeks after that. I didn't even want to look at comics. I sure wanted nothing to do with writing them. Both were reminders of my failure. Losing hurt, and it hurt for a good while. Eventually, I did pick up a pen again. I picked up reading comics again too. I had tried and failed, but at least I tried and was proud of what I had come up with. I grew as a writer from that experience. I kept reminding myself, rejection is a part of the process. Failure is a part of success. I may have slowed down, but I wasn't going to give up. There was always the next story, and there was always a better story. And the more I wrote and perfected my craft, the better I would get. What did you think of my pitches? Did you enter the Three Worlds, Three Moons contest? Let me know in the comments below.